Hey, it's Jamie. I got 41 in IB, and today I'll be sharing some tips on how to get over 40 in IB. For this video, I've grouped up all of my tips into 4 different categories, so feel free to skim between them. My first category of tips are study tips. To get over 40 in IB, you should be aiming to get 6s or 7s for pretty much all of your subjects. My first tip is to understand the content. Fundamentally, to do well in IB subjects, you can't just regurgitate definitions and rote learn things. Instead, you have to have a good understanding of the underlying concepts so that you can apply, analyze, and evaluate them. My strategy to understand nearly all of my IB content was to go through my classes' PowerPoints or the textbook every week or two and then making flashcards. The useful thing about going through the course notes again is that I'm able to see what I need to understand, and I can focus on the content and make sure that I understand everything. Especially for more conceptual and harder subjects such as HO physics or HO chemistry, there's going to be a lot of concepts which you just don't understand right away. So when you find concepts which you don't understand right away, note them down and then try to use other resources to try to understand that concept. For example, you could use supplementary YouTube videos, or you could ask your teachers for additional assistance. My second tip is to use effective memorization techniques. Once you understand the concept, you should try to focus on committing it to memory. However, I think a lot of students use really ineffective methods to do this. You probably have met, or you might be a student who uses ineffective methods such as rereading notes or highlighting notes. However, sorry to break it to you, those techniques are really ineffective at building long-term memory and are just a waste of time. Instead, you should try to employ spaced repetition and active recall into your study to build up your long-term memory. So for myself, I personally extensively use Anki to memorize thousands of flashcards for my content-based subjects such as Mandarin ab initio, chemistry, physics, and economics. Normally, my memory is absolutely terrible and I'll forget something the next day. However, since Anki forces me to actively recall my content, I'm able to memorize thousands of flashcards. An example of me leveraging spaced repetition is through my Anki flashcards for Mandarin. Every morning I spend 30 minutes grinding through them, and this was not only a really fun study method, but it also helped me to memorize thousands of flashcards really well. Now, my third tip is to practice. So once you understand and have memorized the content, you should be trying to practice through things such as past papers and practice essays. So for the sciences and maths, I grinded lots of questions. So I used Pestle and Revision Village to get my practice questions. Pestle is a great question bank which I used mainly for chemistry and physics. And the thing which I like about it is that it's really easy to use and navigate, and that it's also free. Additionally, I employed Revision Village as my question bank for math. And the thing I like about Revision Village is that they have written up answers for all of the math problems and also video solutions. However, Revision Village is kind of pricey. For the humanities and languages, I strongly recommend doing lots of practice essays. And the important thing to do once you've written your practice essays is to get feedback on them from your teachers or tutors. Through this, you're able to get advice on how to better improve your essays, and you also get information about what mistakes to avoid doing next time. Honestly, in retrospect, I wish I had more confidence to ask my teachers for feedback on my practice essays. So now my next category of tips are study habits. So to get over 40 in IB, you also need to have effective study habits. So my first tip is just to not procrastinate. I'm sure you've heard this multiple times before, but I'm going to say it again. Don't procrastinate. When you procrastinate, you not only get into really stressful situations where you might have to end up doing all-nighters, but you also create rushed work which isn't the highest quality. Instead, by starting early on assignments or just chipping away at them every single day, you get to distribute your work over a longer period of time and you're just less stressed. Furthermore, in IB, every single mark counts. For example, I scraped an A for my talk essay, and had I just procrastinated it and written a slightly worse essay, which might have been a mark or two lower, I would have gotten a B for my TOK essay, and I would have gotten a 40 in IB instead of 41. My second tip is to start assignments early. The first bit of IB Year 2 is absolutely insane. Pretty much every week, on top of all of your normal studies and topic tests, you also will have EE or IA drafts or finals due, and that can get really stressful. However, you can minimize your stress by starting your assignments as early as possible. For example, for myself, I did most of my EE and most of my math IA during the summer vacation, and then I was far less stressed in term 1 and I had a far more manageable workload. Furthermore, when you're doing your first draft of an essay, such as your extended essay, I would strongly recommend to write a really bad first draft in as little time as possible to beat writer's block and perfectionism. system. And then once you're done with your really bad first draft, you can keep editing and refining it to make a better final product. My third tip is to stay focused when studying. Yes, I know, when studying it's really tempting to just doom scroll TikTok or to listen to gangster rap music while you're trying to study. However, this is really harmful since the quality of your study takes a massive hit and it will just take a lot longer to get all of your work done. Instead, I would recommend that you eliminate distractions so that you can study more effectively and in less time. My fourth tip is to take time to rest. The IB requires you to be intellectually sharp so that you can study effectively and work on assignments effectively. Personally, I found that sleeping 8 hours every night not only helps me to feel better, but it also helps me to learn content better and to be more energetic every day. Furthermore, I definitely recommend taking some time to rest every week so that you don't get burnt out in the long run. My next category of tips are tips about mindset. So my first tip is to make getting over 40 a goal. Honestly, getting over 40 in IB is pretty difficult. It's going to require you to spend a lot of time studying and there are going to be a lot of difficult times that you face. The benefit of having a goal is that it really motivates you to keep going even when times are difficult and you can't be bothered studying. My second tip is to put the work in. Unless you're a genius, getting over 40 in IB is actually pretty difficult and it's going to require you to do a lot of study and not really have much of a life. Personally, I spent 2 years living and breathing IB and pretty much all of my hours of the day was spent doing something related towards IB, such as going to school, doing homework and assignments, and even doing class activities. Furthermore, I even spent a big proportion of many of my school holidays doing IB related work so that I could stay on top of tasks. My third tip is to have a growth mindset. The IB program is really challenging. At some point you're going to face a failure. You might do bad in a topic test or you might do bad in a mock exam. The thing about IB is that, yeah, you might have done bad in a topic test. However, you've got a chance to clutch up for your mock exam. And even if you don't do well in your mock exam, you can always clutch up for your final exams. So no failures are really ever final and you always have an opportunity to improve and clutch up. For example, in my first term of IB, I got really bad marks. I got 36% in one of my math tests. I got 52% in my first physics test. However, I didn't let my failures define me. Instead, I saw it as an opportunity for myself to grow and develop, and eventually I managed to do fine in both of those subjects. My last category of tips are gaming the system tips. I think there are many decisions you can make before and during IB to maximize your chances at getting over 40 in IB. So my first tip is to choose subjects wisely. The IB subjects which you choose to do really impact how hard it is to get over 40 in IB. For instance, it's quite hard to get over 40 if you're doing difficult subjects such as HL Physics, HL Math AA, and HL Chemistry, compared to taking easier subjects such as AISL Math, HL Art, and HL Geography. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of a strategy, but many people do use the strategy to get over 40 in IB. My second tip is to choose easier IA topics. I think a big misconception that students have for IAs is that they have to be hard and complicated to get a good mark, but this simply isn't the case. Fundamentally, an IA marks your ability to write a report or to analyze and evaluate things. And what topic you choose really doesn't matter. So you can choose the easy IA topic and still get good marks. For example, I'm pretty bad at doing chemistry practicals and I'd often screw up doing titrations. However, I chose to do a really easy IA where investigative impact of different concentrations of hydrochloric acid on the amount of hydrogen produced through electrolysis. And I still managed to get a good mark for that. My final tip is to choose an easier EE subject. The difficulty of the extended essay really depends on what subjects you choose. For example, an economics EE is far harder than an English EE. Personally, I chose to do an English extended essay and I found the entire process to be really chill and relaxed. While many of my friends spent a lot of time doing in-depth research and reading dozens of papers, I essentially just wrote a 4,000 word essay about a book. I'd really recommend doing an English extended essay because it takes far less time to do and statistically you're more likely to get an A. That wraps it up for this video. I hope that all of the tips which I shared with you today were helpful, and stay tuned to watch future videos about productivity, IB, and university life. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!